Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. 2023 was another record year for toxic drug deaths in BC. The chief coroner says the province is going in the wrong direction in tackling the crisis. What's needed to make things different in 2024? We'll take your calls on that in a few minutes. And at 12:30, the Canadian Pediatric Association says kids need the chance to take risks when they're playing outdoors. How do you feel about risky play? I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on the CBC News app on our website, cbc.ca/BC, and on YouTube as well. You can search for CBC Vancouver. Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth has just spoken to media this past hour, addressing the province's appealing a court injunction that pauses its law against public drug use. Now, we requested an interview with Attorney General Nikki Sharma today. She was not able to join us and sent us this statement. After reviewing the court's decision, we have decided to file a notice of appeal seeking to have the court's order overturned. We are determined to keep doing everything we can to fight the toxic drug crisis and treat addiction as a health matter rather than a criminal one, while recognizing that drugs should not be used in a range of public places frequented by children and families. It is our view that the Act addresses this. Well, yesterday, BC's chief coroner announced another grim record on the toxic drug crisis. In 2023, 2,511 people died from suspected illicit drugs. It is the leading cause of death in people aged 10 to 59. Lisa Lapointe said BC is not doing enough. In fact, the province is going in the wrong direction.
What if, instead of continuing to revert to policing and punishing in the guise of public safety, we focused instead on addressing the underlying reasons people use substances or become dependent on substances: pain, trauma, physical or mental health challenges? What if we focused on developing a meaningful continuum of care for those experiencing harms from controlled and illegal drugs? Or developed evidence-based standards for evidence-based treatment and recovery? What about tracking outcomes of programs purporting to provide substance use treatment, often for huge profits? What if, instead of watching people die by the thousands in our province and across our country as a result of an unregulated, poisonous, illicit drug market, we provided those at risk of serious harms with safer, regulated alternatives?
We're asking you, in light of another devastating year for toxic drug deaths in BC, what's needed to make 2024 different? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. According to the chief coroner, the highest rate of deaths was in the Vancouver region that includes the downtown east side. Sarah Blythe is executive director of the Overdose Prevention Society in Vancouver. Good afternoon.
Morning or afternoon.
I'll ask you that same question. What's needed to make this year, 2024, different and actually curb those mounting numbers of people dying?
Well, since we've been pushing people off the street in the city from space to space, decamping on Hastings, pushing them into Oppenheimer and other parks surrounding communities. We need to find places for people to go so that they can come out of their housing, so that they aren't on the street, so that they can go indoors or they can be around people that can help them, because the majority of people are dying inside. So they need places to go that they're safe. And obviously some alternatives to the drugs that they're taking. Education for young people is really, really important. And speaking to a lot of youth, you can see clearly that they don't understand what they're getting into when they're using drugs. And we're getting a lot of young people using drugs like we did back in the old days. And not really understanding that pills could be fentanyl. And so there's just so much that we can be doing to make things better.
As you heard there, Lisa Lapointe raised the lack of data and oversight on private treatment centers and what outcomes are actually coming from them. What is your observation when it comes to people who are able to avoid overdose, but people seeking help? What happens?
Well, at our overdose prevention site, people can come in and they can seek help in all kinds of ways. We offer wound care. We support them if they want recovery or housing. All of the things that make people, give people a better life. So yeah,
Hmm.
we've seen people successful in recovery, and we aid them with that. But there's so many different things that we could be doing,
Like
which
what?
includes recovery on demand.
Mm.
Is important. So when people come in and they say, we've had enough, we want to go into recovery, making sure we get them, things have improved. Uh, we've been working with Access Central to improve getting people in right away when they're ready. Um, Safe supply of drugs that are not contaminated, that people know what they're taking so that they're not taking street drugs. Um, Housing is really important, having people so they're not living in absolutely desperation in the snow and in the heat and outside in the elements is really, really hard on people. Having a lot of homeless people is not helpful. Um, Helping with getting some more mental health help and dealing with some of the issues of trauma and the underlying issues
Yeah.
uh, that they're dealing with. And also educating young people. A lot of young people um, are sort of brought in at the age of like 16 years old into gangs and into other illegal
Mm.
activities. Um, they put them in a very vulnerable situation, and they some of them
Yeah.
end up using drugs, and then you see them on the street. It's terrible
You've
situation.
said that twice now. You've mentioned education for young people twice.
Yeah.
It's not something we
Hmm.
hear about very often in this, when we discuss these numbers, when we discuss the crisis, the ongoing crisis. Um, what kind of education do you envision?
I think we just need to be frank with young people about drugs and the toxicity and what are in them, like we did when the HIV crisis. We need to tell them what's going on. They need to be clearly in the know. My son has had some of his friends die who they didn't die because they thought they were taking fentanyl. They died because they didn't know what they were taking. And so and that's you hear that over and over again with young people. So educating them and being serious about what the issues are, making sure that our most vulnerable young people aren't slipping through the cracks. That's a big deal. A lot of kids with ADHD or disabilities, they end up really vulnerable to using drugs and pain management, even trauma, kids with trauma. And you see young people in the downtown east side that just came from school that have just fallen through the cracks. So the foster system, care system. So there's a lot we need to do to help our young people so that they're not falling through the cracks and ending up in this situation.
We have also, heard today and heard yesterday as well that the province is appealing this court injunction on its
Mhm.
law that was to limit drug use in public spaces. The Attorney General says this is balancing health needs and public safety. How do you
Yeah.
respond to those concerns people express about public drug use?
Mainly, how I can see it is we just need to get people a safe places inside where they're not having to use outside. When they're using outside, for some people, it's a safer place than using inside. So my advice is that we just follow this up with getting people into safe places where they can use together so that they're not dying. And that would be the most important thing uh, in just getting people so that they're not on the street, so that they're not having to be outside using.
Uh, and so, what's your reaction to the province appealing this decision then?
My reaction is just that like I said, it's that we would I personally and just all the folks that I see that are dying every day, in the best interest of them would be to get them a safe place to use that's not outside and alone
Do you?
or inside their apartments alone. So or getting them a safe supply of something that they can, and the mental health and housing that they need. That would be my thoughts on that.
It is an election year, and this is likely to be a topic of debate in the election. What should be at the forefront of those discussions?
The forefront should be housing. It should be getting people safe supply, something that they are using, that they know what it is and they know what they're taking, especially people that have mental health issues and pain. And underlying trauma, getting them spaces to go, like overdose prevention sites where they can use around other people, where if they have an overdose, we can respond to it immediately and that they won't die. And finding more safe spaces throughout the city like that so that people can get off the street and get inside to a safe place.
And is there more,
Um,
is there enough attention to that? Are there enough efforts to create more of those spaces?
Yeah, well, we continuously are working on it with, the province, to try and get safe, safer spaces. So there are conversations about that now. But obviously, it won't be good enough until we're not, seeing one person, die a day in the downtown east side and a surrounding area. So we need to continue to work to make some significant changes, or else people are going to continue to die. I mean, from my perspective, last month, 3 people I knew died. We have memorial services on a weekly or monthly basis for people that we know. So it's unbelievably traumatic. I can't even describe how it feels to have to go through that. And it needs to end. And we need more support from all levels of government. Yeah.
Sarah, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sarah Blythe is Executive Director of the Overdose Prevention Society in Vancouver. We've been asking you what you think needs to be done to make things different in 2024 in light of another devastating year in toxic drug deaths in 2023. Stephen is on the line in Vernon. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for calling. What are your thoughts on what needs to be done this year?
Well, this year we need to be getting more people into proper treatment, real treatment. The police is not treatment. I was recently in psychosis, not drug-related, but I recently had a psychotic episode. I thankfully was able to receive treatment, but, for a night, I was the crazy person yelling in the street, and there, to an onlooker, to a family that was seeing that, there would not have been any difference to them in their mind whether or not I was the crazy person yelling in the street or if I was the drug user yelling in the street. It looked exactly the same. I was causing a disturbance, but, if that family had been around, I wouldn't have been causing them harm. I wouldn't have been doing anything wrong other than, causing a disturbance. And I really needed the help.
How did you get the help?
It wasn't police intervention, I'll tell you that. It was actually my girlfriend helping me. That's a whole different issue. But I was really lucky, and it shouldn't be that a drug user, maybe causing the disturbance, that they just have to get lucky and that they don't have the family call the police on them and that's it. They need real help. They need a bed. They need a treatment bed.
What do you say to what would you say to someone who raises their concerns about when I walk around I get afraid of aggression, unpredictable behavior, and that kind of thing? That seems to be where this ruling is, or rather the law is based on, right? Is people who are concerned about children at playgrounds and things like that. What would you say to them?
I would really say, try and have some more sympathy. It's legitimate to feel scared. It is legitimate to feel scared, but also think about where that person is coming from, too. They probably feel pretty scared, too. No one's out no one's out yelling in a playground because they're having a good day, is basically what I would say. And so focusing on the bigger interventions to these problems, as well as, if you see that person and, maybe you do feel able to, approach them and say, hey, maybe this isn't the place, it's okay to do that. No one's going to just, cause that kind of disturbance because they want to.
You're doing better now, Stephen?
I'm doing a lot better now. I got the help that I needed.
Good to hear. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you for taking my call.
That's Stephen in Vernon. Brian is up next on the Sunshine Coast. What do we need to do differently on the drug crisis, Brian?
Pardon me?
Hi there, Brian. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on doing things differently this year on the drug crisis?
Well, we really need to overcome the stigma around drug use. Pretty much everybody uses drugs, and we know from the failed experiment with alcohol prohibition that taking that kind of a penalizing approach only makes things worse and increases the dependence on black market options that are obviously very toxic and harmful for the public at large. And the prescribed safe supply options have been very helpful for me personally. And I happen to live in a community where those options are more broad than elsewhere, and very thankfully so.
You have access to safer supply.
Yes, I do.
What
And
difference
it's
does it make
unfortunate.
for you, Brian?
Well, my life was incredibly unstable prior to getting my prescription, and my bank account was empty, and I was basically waking up every day, if I got any sleep, with the fear of not surviving to the next bedtime. So I've had a couple of years now almost of much more increased stability and productivity, and basically much more normal social life, and I get to function in society and behave like a normal person, which, you have no idea what people can do if you can properly house them and recognize their needs and not treat them like criminals for just behaving like a human being and using substances.
Oh, that's really powerful. Are you seeking treatment? Is that something that you see on your horizon?
Well, if there were more treatment options that made sense. I mean, the idea of forced treatment is really scary, and a lot of people who are even desperate for treatment, unfortunately, if they have to return to an unhoused situation, are then looking at an even greater risk of losing their lives if they're just going back to the same unstable situation and without safer drug options, then you can come down on your illicit drug use, but you're facing the same stresses and difficulties that you were previously, and you have the same temptations. The chances are you're going to be at risk for even increased risk for overdose because your tolerance will be greatly reduced after spending time in treatment. So that's very scary to me.
Brian, really good to hear from you. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you're doing well.
Thank you very, very much.
That's Brian on the Sunshine Coast. Our last caller on this is Steve in Vancouver. Hi, Steve.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. What are your thoughts on education?
Give me 1 second. I'm just pulling over here. I'm a retired educator, and my last 17 years was all psychology at the high school level, and my family are educators. We're educators at all levels, and while I appreciate all the discussion around what needs to be done right now, none of the current plans that I've heard deal with the issue of there are more and more and more children following this lifestyle bent. Disrupted lives, broken families, early childhood trauma. The list is long. What we need to do is redirect resources right now back earlier in this game to help rewrite the future. So we have to continue to deal with what is going on right now currently. But if we just stay focused here, the numbers and volume of kids that are coming up that are going to follow these alternate lifestyles is exponentially increasing. So just briefly, my program had university students mentor high school students, and my high school students went into the elementary classrooms and mentored elementary children, either targeted or not. But my students were made aware of adverse childhood ACEs, early childhood trauma, attachment-related stuff. So they had an eye for what they should be watching for in an effort to assist these children to get help sooner. Anyways, I agree that obviously we got to do something with what's current, but we got to get ahead of this game. And this game right now is going off the rails in mid-elementary level.
Wow, that young. And we heard Sarah Blythe talk about the need for education as well.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you very much. Really good to hear from you too.
Yeah, have Sarah phone me. Okay, have a good one. Bye.
Exchange ideas. Thanks so much for the call. That's Steve in Vancouver. And a couple of emails here. Sandy writes us, in my view, there is no comprehensive government strategy. Currently, to get into detox, a prospective client has to phone every day to see if there's a bed. There should never be a wait list for detox. There should also be seamless admissions from detox to treatment. Currently, there is not. Once someone finally gets into detox, but then is discharged, but no treatment available, they are very vulnerable. There should also be government regulation and oversight on recovery houses. These are unregulated and not treatment. Meanwhile, Sonali writes, the news was really disappointing, but I cannot agree with the coroner on the point that the overuse of drugs is not dangerous for the common public. I have to travel to downtown for my job, and it is scary every single day with people under the influence who are aggressive and attacking. I hope this problem can be solved rather quickly. Thank you very much for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca is our address. It's 12:27, 1:27 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today. And more to come on this story this afternoon. In a few minutes, the province will announce an expansion of treatment and recovery services for people living with substance use challenges. That question about the government's response is one that comes up again and again. Dr. Paxton Bach is co-medical director at the BC Centre on Substance Use. He spoke on the Coast.
The urgency hasn't been there. And I think that especially nowadays, we're releasing a lot of political rhetoric, a lot of politicization of the issue. And it really, it's enormously disheartening to see that rather than a bipartisan agreement to come together and talk about this and put evidence out there for discussion, assemble groups of experts to talk about what a response might look like and really meaningfully address this. But I think that ever expecting decriminalization itself to make an immediate impact on the number of overdose deaths was never something that I think we should have been asking for. It simply doesn't address the primary driver of those deaths, which, as the chief coroner identified, is the toxic drug supply, and decriminalization does not change that reality. So lots to talk about in terms of the good, the bad, and the other regarding our experience with decrim thus far. But I don't think that it was ever going to have an immediate bearing on these numbers.
Dr. Paxton Bach is co-medical director at the BC Centre on Substance Use. More on CBC Radio throughout the day here. And coming up in our next half hour, we'll hear from the head of the Heli-skiing Association. Right now, it's time for the CBC News.
Good afternoon, I'm Belle Puri. The Surrey Police Service has released its $142 million budget for 2024. If the city approves it, 526 officers will be hired by the end of the year. The budget comes as Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke continues to defy the province-ordered police transition from the RCMP. An arrest has been made in connection with a deadly shooting in Surrey in February 2022. One woman was injured, a 24-year-old man was killed. Now, 23-year-old Yusuf Kontos of Ontario has been charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. Backcountry users are being warned to be ready for emergencies after a snowmobiler was killed and two skiers had to be rescued in two separate incidents. RCMP in Golden and Fernie say a 24-year-old man died when his vehicle left the trail down a steep embankment and hit some trees. In the other mishap, two skiers got stranded on a cliff in the Emerald Peak area of Yoho National Park. A look at the BC weather along the north coast. Showers, a high of 8 degrees. In the Peace region, mainly sunny and a high of 2. For the central interior, a slight chance of afternoon showers, a high of 2 degrees. In the southeast and southern interior, a good chance of rain this afternoon, a high of 3 degrees. And along the south coast, Greater Victoria and Metro Vancouver, a rainy afternoon, a high of 8 degrees. That's the CBC News from Vancouver.
Thank you, Belle. That is Belle Puri in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC Radio 1, live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. And we were covering the record number of deaths in 2023. Due to toxic drugs. And that was the announcement from BC's chief coroner yesterday, Lisa Lapointe. And right now, at this moment, Premier David Eby is joining other officials in introducing new services for substance users. And this is just the day after that announcement, of course. And so we are live streaming that as well on cbc.ca/BC. In light of our conversation, asking you what needs to be done differently to make 2024 different on this drug crisis, and wrote us, safe supply, our priorities in using tax money for social housing, healthcare, and education. If we need more money, then tax corporations and wealth. We could have the resources. Bob in Revelstoke writes, I'm against safe injection sites. My son passed away from a fentanyl overdose just over 3 years ago. Safe injection would have only prolonged his hurt. I only see detox with no early release. He was in rehab 3 times and left on his own when he gave up and couldn't handle it. We need to be tough on drugs, not soft. Bob, I'm very sorry for your loss. This crisis certainly affects so many British Columbians. We'll continue to follow it. And the announcement, of course, from the province this afternoon here on CBC. Investigators are now trying to piece together the deadly heli-skiing crash north of Terrace. The cause is still unknown. 3 people died and 4 more were injured. The heli-skiing community calls it a shocking and rare tragedy. Joining me now is Ross Cloutier. He is the Executive Director of Heli-skiing Canada, the Industry Standards Association. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Michelle.
What's your reaction to this tragedy?
Oh, this is, it's a significant event. For us, these are so rare, and it has just so many impacts on the families involved, both guests and staff and guides and pilots that, it's just a really sad event for us, for sure.
What is the conversation like right now among those guides and pilots and companies?
Well, just that, just how sad this is, and this is an aviation event. It's not a ski accident, and so it's just a little out of our domain from a Heli-skiing Canada perspective. We're looking forward to the Transportation Safety Board report whenever that is, and see if there's lessons in there for us. But for the most part, Heli-skiing Canada's background and our interest is really on the ski and the operational side. And not so much on the aviation side, but when this happens, it has big impacts right through the company, but also through the industry. It's a small industry, right? So lots of people know the guides and pilots and other staff involved, and the guests ski at various places. So some of the other operations may or may not know some of these people.
I can imagine in terms of the impact on the community. As you mentioned, there is an investigation by the Transportation Safety Board, and the cause is still unknown. Now, you look at, as you said, not the aviation side, but the skiing side. This is an aviation incident. But overall, what can you tell us about the risks associated with heli-skiing?
Well, there are risks associated with it for sure, but we just had to talk about the drug epidemic in British Columbia and the number of fatalities with that. We're not even, in that conversation at all. And so, there are risks associated with this, but this is the the Heli-cat and the heli-ski sector in Canada has the highest standards in guides and pilots and the experience of any place in the world. And so, we have
What does that
tremendous
mean,
effort.
highest standards? How do you compare those
Well,
standards?
it is, because that's exactly what that is. I mean, the requirements of the operators in terms of, the snow safety on our side, the snow safety and equipment and the communications and all of that is literally, the highest in the world. And so it's fairly, very stringent for these businesses to operate on the ski side. And it's the same on the aviation side. I mean, Transport Canada regulates the operators. None of our operators own their own helicopters. Those are all contracted service providers. And so, also the Helicopter Association of Canada, they have their own best practices and training syllabus materials for both mountain pilots as well as heli-ski pilots. There are mountain pilot training programs that adhere to their standards. So, when you start putting all the layers together of Transportation Canada, the Helicopter Association of Canada, the mountain pilot training programs, the helicopter ski side, it's a highly standardized and highly regulated industry overall.
And you accredit the heli-skiing, the companies. What's it like for you? What do you look for when it comes to those qualifications?
Yeah, our process is we inspect and accredit the businesses every 5 years. In the interim years, they go through the standards checklist and declare that they continue to meet all those standards. And so that's the accreditation process, that we do. And it's an arm's length process that we do that through. And we have inspectors that act on our behalf and things for that. And, our focus, as I said, is really on the operational side. So what are the emergency response plans? What's the risk management? What's the education of guests? What's the equipment, communication systems, ski guide qualifications, all those kind of things. It's a big, long list. So that's really what our focus is on. And it's a mature industry. It's been around for 60 years, and most of these businesses are mature and been around for quite a while. We've only had a couple of small operators join in the last few years. So, it's an industry that's been around quite a long time. It's sophisticated, and the standards are high, and the expectations are high as well.
What happens now in this case, from your perspective?
Well, we're going to wait for the Transportation Safety Board report, and we'll provide any support to them that they ask for. It's really, outside our domain, so they may talk to us, they may not. And Northern Escape at some point will start operations again, whatever that happens to be.
They have paused operations, yeah.
They have, yeah. They're not operating right now, and they'll restart when they decide to do that. And that'll be in conversation, with them, the RCMP, the coroner's office, as well as Transportation Safety Board people. Okay.
Really appreciate your taking us through the process and the reaction in the heli-skiing community right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Ross Cloutier is the Executive Director of Heli-cat Canada. 12:39 now. It's 12:39, 1:39 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today here on CBC. Again, we're live on radio and live streaming as well on our website, cbc.ca/BC, on your CBC News app, and on YouTube. CBC Vancouver is where you can find us. Well, today, the Canadian Pediatric Society issued new recommendations talking about risky play for children and saying that there needs to be more opportunity for children to play outdoors and take some risks with some caveats. We're asking you, how do you feel about risky play? And what's your own approach as a parent? And what are your own memories of being outdoors and playing and pushing those boundaries? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me to take your calls is Dr. Mariana Brusani, professor and director of UBC's Human Early Learning Partnership, and that's with the Faculty of Medicine. Good afternoon, Dr. Brusani.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, what do they mean by risky play?
Yeah, it's a good question. So risky play is probably something that we all just used to refer to as play before. But now, when we noticed that more and more of the kids' risks were taken out of play, we had to come up with a word for it. So the definition that we use of risky play is thrilling and exciting forms of play where children are engaged with uncertainty and there's a chance of physical injury. And so what this typically looks like is things like, say, climbing trees or running really fast, or even, say, building a den with tools or rough and tumble play, those sorts of things.
Okay. And at what point would you say that goes too far? I think that's where parents may be wondering, well, okay, but how much do I let them run free?
Yeah, well, and what's important is to think, the message we want to get across to parents is not, okay, I want my child to get risky play and let's go out and do it, right? This is a gradual building of activities and it can be quite scary for parents to think, okay, how do I get started on this, right? And so we want to emphasize that it's building any skill, just like anything else, and it takes time. And so, if you want to think about what to do today, set a really underwhelming goal for yourself, something that you feel is completely manageable. To give you an example, it's like, next time I want to say, be careful, I'm going to count to 15. So that will give time for me to think about, how serious is this? What's the worst thing that can happen? And actually let your child kind of have some opportunity to actually engage with the situation, and for you to see, actually, they're not doing that bad. There's no need for me to step in here.
You hit on something there, because I was going to ask you, what is the benefit of this? And so you were saying it lets them make that assessment themselves. How important is that?
It's so important. I mean, there's so many benefits. If you think about just about any aspect of child health and development, risky play is important for it. But that is an example of kids building risk management skills, right? So they're figuring out for themselves how their body works, how the world reacts to their body, what they're comfortable with, how far they can push themselves, what happens when they do. And that's all happening in play, which is a relatively safe environment. We don't see very major injuries in play. They're extremely rare. And so it's an opportunity for them to try this stuff out, to build those risk management skills, to stretch those risk management muscles, because later on, there's not going to be adults around telling them what to do or how to do it. And they're gonna have to figure this out for themselves. So we have to give them an opportunity now to be able to build those skills for later.
Oh, I certainly relate to this, letting my children go a little further, balancing on their own, climbing up high on their own. Your stomach is a little bit in your throat, but then you say, okay, let me just hold on a little bit. But it's something I continue to navigate for sure. Dr. Mariana Brusani joins me from a director of UBC's Human Early Learning Partnership, a professor at UBC, and that's with the Faculty of Medicine. And we're asking you, in light of these recommendations from the Canadian Pediatric Society to give children more opportunities for risky play outdoors. So this would be things like playing at height, climbing, jumping, balancing at height, bicycling at a high speed, sledding. A lot of kids did that last week. Sliding and running, play involving tools. Playing near fire or water. Okay, there you go. Rough and tumble play. But specifically, they're also saying that this doesn't mean doing things like or ignoring evidence, like not wearing helmets, for example. Those are still very important, or not wearing seat belts and things like that. So those important caveats and distinctions are being made. I want to hear from you. What is your own approach as a parent? What are your own memories of risky play, aka what was known as play? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And Jessica is joining us from Vancouver. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, go ahead.
I'm so happy to be on here. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
And I may be one of Maria's biggest fans. I'm an early childhood educator and mother here, and we've actually had the pleasure of having the Brusoni Labs come into our studios to talk to parents and educate them on play.
Wow.
And I'm such a believer in the importance of play, but especially with all the research the Brusoni Labs have done. And looking back at my childhood, yes, it was very much a lot of trust. Not as much language guidance as the Brusoni Labs and as us educators offer now, but I think, given COVID and it was a time where a lot of parents weren't going out and weren't comfortable, I think now is like the most beautiful time to be offering all of this research and sending it out to care centers and into spaces where language and balancing, offering children opportunities to go beyond their comfort zone and being around different parents who parent in such a way that is very open and very trusting.
Right.
I think we owe a lot of that to the Brusoni Labs and to Maria and everything you've done. What's that?
Pardon me. Yes, you are a fan, certainly. Can you tell me about that language part? If parents are I love what you said about being exposed to other parents who have a different approach. What kind of language might parents need to just change their attitude, perhaps?
Yeah, so the way we have modeled it in care spaces and in play-based spaces, really, they are tweaks, but it really is offering opportunity for children to test themselves. So it looks a little something like, or it could sound a little something like, instead of, no, don't do that, that's dangerous, how about, how do you feel right now? Way up high on those monkey bars. Do you feel safe? Do you have a plan? Show me, tell me. And then it really empowers a child to be going ahead and moving beyond their comfort zone. And it is our job as parents and as educators to really know the child and to see their gross motor capacities and confidences. And knowing that so that we don't have to step in too soon. And in turn, it's everything that Maria teaches us, right? Is and her team and Rachel, that children really are powerful beings. But if we get in the way of them trying things, this is where it becomes more problematic. Children feel hindered. They feel like they're not allowed to do anything. And I'm not trying to be drastic or over dramatic, but it is, my husband and I really model this with our child, and now we have a child who's very confident and competent and capable.
When your child, Jessica, I have to move on to other callers, but when your child gets hurt, what is the language you use?
When he gets hurt, well, I will know if he's really hurt based on the heights he's been at and how he's fallen, because I'm there to support him. But the language is really not being too over dramatic or over emphasizing so that it doesn't scare him.
Okay.
So it'll be something like, oh, I'll use his name. His name is Miles. I'll say, Miles, it looks like you fell really hard there. Are you okay? Do you need help?
Okay.
Or if he sees friends, it's the same idea as modeling. It's making sure that he does check in. That you do show care, that you are paying attention.
Yeah.
But you're not over dramatizing.
That's really great. Jessica, thank you so much. Great to hear from you.
Thanks.
You know this well. Thank you. That's Jessica in Vancouver. I'm glad she didn't say, I told you so, which is what we sometimes expect parents to say. Don't say that. Mike is on the line in Victoria. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Hi. What are your thoughts on risky play? Even that term.
Well, what she just said, the woman said at the beginning there, is that it's just play. Like, we've made it all so scary. Everything, like, we live close to a park. And you just hear the parents, don't do this, don't touch that, don't climb too high.
Right.
I'm just like, oh, my God. Because when we were kids, we were, kicked out of the house at 8 in the morning and told to come back at dark.
I rode my bike all through the neighborhood. I don't think anybody knew where I was.
Our kid, Owen, he has free run of our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Goes down to his buddy's Archer's house, which is right across our neighborhood. And, go down to the park, they play, and they are not, we have never said to them, be careful. We take that right out. As soon as they were moving, we were just like, none of this, be careful. You got to I feel like kids just need to be able to be, be kids.
Need to be. Wonderful. Mike, thank you very much.
You bet. Bye.
Bye-bye. That's Mike in Victoria. Christine is up next in Campbell River. What's your approach to risky play, Christine?
When my children were younger, I allowed risky play. I think it's very important for children as they're developing and growing to learn their own limits, and it helps to build their confidence. I remember one particular moment when my son was at the top of a playground structure, and like someone else said, my stomach was in my throat and I was worried, but I just held back and let him figure it out and thought, what's the worst that can happen? Maybe a broken arm, but even those heal, right? So I think it's important to give our children space to learn on their own and not impose our own fears on them.
Impose our own fears. What the Canadian Pediatrics Society was saying, that it can help, help kids manage anxiety and those kinds of emotions. And I can see Mariana Bressani nodding her head as you're speaking, Christine. Thank you very much. Our last call today on this is Keith in Vancouver. Hi, Keith.
Hi there. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I've got kind of thoughts. I was telling the producer there. I find the kind of term risky play kind of funny, but I guess when you think about it, people over maybe 35, 40 kind of always grew up with this for the most part.
Right.
As a kid, you might see a backyard with a couple trees and a fence, but with 6 kids being outside in the summer, that can turn into quite an elaborate game where I guess an adult just didn't see it. So that was, kick the can and, down in Cape Breton, my grandfather, the environmentalist that he was, we would burn all the paper. So we'd go out to the burn barrel and burn everything. And, talking about, risky with water and things like that, we would put small amount of gasoline around the burn bin and let it rip. So
oh boy,
not the smartest thing when you're 12. But the other one I was mentioning was there's also companies out there that will certainly help you with your risky play. One was a product called the JART, J-A-R-T, so lawn darts.
Oh, okay.
And these were, everyone's got their own idea of what risk is, but these were thankfully absolutely banned. You can find them online, pictures at least, but these were lawn darts with a solid, maybe 70-gram tip on them that you would throw back and forth. And I know that I had some as a kid, but these were just monstrosities. So,
oh, no.
They're
so
no
is there
longer
like a
existing.
middle ground here, a happy middle ground?
There is, yeah. I think just no metal tip.
No metal. There it is.
They
No
were heavy.
gasoline.
Yeah, lay off the gasoline, but they were, maybe not gasoline on the jar, but they were incredible how heavy they were, and there were a lot, Eric, what is a lot, but a fair number of injuries from the jar. Worth looking up and seeing.
Yeah.
What these things
Oh
were.
my goodness, Keith. I think maybe some people are going, yeah, I remember that. Thanks so much for the call.
Enjoy your day. Thank you.
You too. That's Keith in Vancouver. Dr. Bressani. Yeah. Is there a middle ground where we're not playing with darts that have metal tips and get some injuries?
Yeah, absolutely. The evidence base around injury prevention is robust, right? So you said right off the top, for example, use helmets and we have to think, so parents know their kids best, right? So thinking about appropriate supervision and building, right? So that you're building from kind of a gradual, what we call a gradual release model. So that you might have, as you're starting out on this journey, a bit more control. And then as you're learning more and more about what your children are capable of doing, then it's greater and greater freedom, right? And that they're building their skills as well.
I have a daughter with a disability. What are what should be the approaches with children with disabilities?
Yeah, well, our main message is that kids with disabilities are kids. And like any kid, they need these experiences. And so sometimes what needs to be adapted for different kinds of disabilities, for example. So like kids with autism sometimes tend to bolt. But there are ways of thinking about, okay, so that my child and what their capabilities are, how can I scaffold an environment where, we address some of the most dangers and like hazardous situations, but we maintain the risk, the opportunity for them to make decisions for themselves, what they want to engage with and how they're going to engage with it. And in most place-based environments, it really isn't that hazardous, and we can provide that freedom.
Michael writes, some parents I know have started to treat the moments when their children engage in risky play to simply advise rather than caution. Example, that rick slope may be slippery, take your time, or you may want to watch for those sharp sticks over there. So looking for that plan, as our first caller said. You know, I touched on what the Pediatric Society said was this helps kids manage risk, learn about anxiety. What is at stake here?
Lots is at stake, and it's actually already become evident in terms of what's happened. So we've seen the erosion of risky play really from the late 80s. It's been going on for quite a while. And so what we have now is a situation where we have greater levels of obesity than we've ever had before, greater challenges with mental health, you know, anxiety disorders and all of those kinds of things. Critical thinking skills are compromised, executive functioning. And I'm not trying to suggest that risky play, you know, that there's a direct like this, therefore that. But these experiences with kids being able to have agency, to have freedom, to figure things out for themselves, we know now how important they are for so many aspects of children's health and development. And so we can pinpoint the fact that the lack of these things in kids' lives has a very serious impact on them.
Thank you so much for giving us the context and some hints at how to navigate this. Really good to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Mariana Brusani, Professor and Director of UBC's Human Early Learning Partnership with the Faculty of Medicine. That's it for our show. Thank you for all of your calls and your emails as well. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. And that live streaming of the press conference where BC is announcing expanded addictions treatment and recovery services is still ongoing. You can go to our website, cbc.ca/BC, to check that out. Thank you so much for joining us. You can watch us again on YouTube and listen to us again on the CBC Listen app. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks for joining us on BC Today. Tomorrow, we'll have our pets column back, and you can call in with your questions to our resident veterinarian. Have a great afternoon. Take care.